Kick it.
Ahoy, mateys, and welcome to This Week in Nickelodeon History. Welcome aboard. I am your captain, Captain Eric, and on this episode, we're going to cover some Nickelodeon anniversaries in between the times of August 7th to August 13th. And boy, do we got some big contenders for some Nickelodeon Hall of Famers here to go over. So let's get right into it. As 32 years ago, on August 13th, 1990, we had the premiere of the Nickelodeon game show, Outta Here, which ran for one season until January 4th, 1991. It was produced at Stage 18 at Nickelodeon Studios at Orlando, Florida, and the in-studio announcer was actually Greg Lee, who, if you are not familiar with the name, you are certainly familiar with his voice if you are a fan of Doug, as he was the voice of Mayor Bob White. Vote for me. And if that wasn't the greatest transition in This Week in Nickelodeon history, I don't know what is, because we're actually celebrating 31 years ago. On August 11th, 1991, we had the premieres of the very first three Nicktoons, Doug, Rugrats, and the Ren Stimpy Show, all premiered on August 11th, 1991. But let's slow down here and take on one at a time. First off, with Doug, created by Jim Jenkins, the show ran for 7 seasons of 117 episodes. Asterisk to that, though, is that the first 52 episodes, the first 4 seasons of the show, is what was produced for Nickelodeon, before Jumbo Pictures, who had a 2-year window option where Nickelodeon could pick up another season of Doug, before, I guess, in their contract, they were then able to shop Doug around to other networks. Now, you got to remember, these were the very first Nicktoons, before there was even a Nicktoons studio making the animation in-house. So they had to go out to other animation studios to pitch shows to make animation for their network. Klasky Chupo with Rugrats, Spunko with the Ren and Stimpy Show, and Jumbo Pictures here with Doug. So, hey, if that's the contract Nickelodeon signed, then that's that. Eventually, they didn't pick up a 5th season, and Jumbo Pictures eventually was purchased by the Walt Disney Company. I know, here's Disney buying up everything. But they bought up Jumbo Pictures to not only continue Doug, but to get Jim Jenkins and his company behind a multitude of other Disney projects, including PB&J Otter, if you're familiar with that. And I believe he was also behind JoJo's Circus. Then, of course, brand spanking new Doug, which would be the other 3 seasons of Doug that would happen under Disney. And, of course, the film, Doug's first movie. And as far as I know, his only movie, which, by the way, if there's anyone out there in the physical media department of Disney, if you can kindly release Doug's first movie in its widescreen format and its original theatrical cut, that would be much appreciated. If you buy that thing on its DVD, you get the TV version with the bars on its side, and you also get the cuts that they made for commercials. I don't know how that happens. I just don't. I don't know how there isn't a person like me working there going, hey, why... we have the print over here. Can we just get this on the DVDs correctly? Anyway, back to the show at hand. It stars Billy West, who voiced pretty much 3 of the main Nicktoons here out of this crop of Nicktoons. But Billy West plays both Doug and his bully Roger Klotz, as Doug and his family are moving to Bluffington from their old home. And it's about almost a slice of life of Doug's ongoing, experiences within Bluffington, meeting new friends, meeting new people in town, having wild adventures in his imagination. And it's a wonderful show. A lot of people look back on it because of it being a bit more of a safer Nicktoon compared to even Rugrats or obviously the Ren and Stimpy Show. But I've gone back as an adult and have gone through and watched Doug. and it holds up extraordinarily well. It's a beautiful show that I honestly think perfectly encapsulated the imagination of the average kid. You know, there had been shows prior that, of course, showed off the imaginations of children, but when you were able to expand upon Doug's thoughts with Quailman or Smash Adams, whatever character he was coming up with, and then how that character and his thoughts were being used to help Doug out in his situation, it kind of makes me think of the stuff I did as a kid, or how I would use fictional characters like that in my head when I was younger. So having that, perfectly sprinkled throughout the show, and just seeing Doug's imagination just go, in completely crazy directions in some cases, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the side characters. Skeeter is by far one of my favorite Nicktoons of all time. Like top 5 Nicktoon probably. He's up there with Roger Klotz and Mr. Dink for me in this show as characters I absolutely love. Mr. Dink, one of my favorite neighbors in animated cartoon history. I've talked about him many times. I would love to do a top 10 neighbors in animation history. That would certainly be a list. I wonder where Mr. Dink would fall among some of the other greats like Mr. Flanders. Or even if I expand it to just television neighbors and we get, is it Wilson next door from Tim on Home Improvement? The guy that looks over the fence. But yeah, that's Doug. If you have never seen Doug, it's worth diving into, at least the Nickelodeon one. The Disney reboot of Doug, although it's a respectable continuation in its first episode or two, really just, I don't know, it falls apart. I tried, I really did. I watched the entirety of Doug, and I immediately went into Disney's Doug, and I lasted like a handful of episodes before I just fell off. Maybe I, should have spaced stuff out a bit more. I'd be able to keep watching, but I don't know. If you're a fan of Doug, let me know if you have a favorite character, if you have a favorite episode. I would love to discuss with you in the comments below if you have any memories. But on to our next Nicktoon, one we just covered a few episodes ago, so I'm going to keep it light here as we are talking about the Rugrats, the foundation on which Nickelodeon was building their empire on throughout the 90s. Created by Arlene Klasky, Gabar Chupo, and Paul Germain, the show ran for a whopping 9 seasons of 172 episodes. What an absolutely extraordinary Nicktoon. I don't have enough air in my lungs to talk about the Rugrats, the importance of them, what they mean to me, what they mean to the world, the extraordinary pieces of trivia and information I know in my head about them. But to give you the briefest TLDR, the Rugrats just exploded out of nowhere out of these first 3 Nicktoons. Somewhere in the mid-90s, after the Rugrats had finished their run, they were done, there wasn't going to be any more Rugrats episodes, and due to a scheduling error, it caused Nickelodeon to air more Rugrats episodes than intended, and due to that, the Rugrats started gaining into popularity that had never been seen before for an original cartoon from a channel. They just overtook children's entertainment in the 90s. And through that boom and that period, a new deal was created to continue Rugrats on Nickelodeon, to make the Rugrats movie for Paramount, which would lead to 2 more feature films, which would also bring a 10-year anniversary special in 2001, which saw our Rugrats going from babies all the way to how they would be 10 years later as teenagers. The popularity of the Rugrats cannot be understated. The Rugrats movie, for example, here's a piece of trivia I just love bringing up, and if this is your first time hearing it, continually push it out there in the world. The Rugrats movie was the very first non-Disney animated feature film to cross over $100 million at the domestic box office. And boom, right then and there is a fact that cements the Rugrats as 90s pop culture legends. I mean, you can whip out a picture of Reptar, and anyone born from the late 80s to the early 90s to the late 90s, early 2000s, they're going to know who Reptar is. He's one of the most popular, marketable characters that you could have right now. I could be wrong, but I see Reptar literally everywhere that classic Nickelodeon merchandise is advertised. So the Rugrats, they're legends. You can't get to SpongeBob walking and strutting I'm ready without the Rugrats crawling and saying a baby's got to do what a baby's got to do. But out of the first three Nicktoons, I don't think anyone was prepared after Doug and the Rugrats to get what came third, which was the Ren and Stimpy Show. Created by John Kay, the show ran for 5 seasons of 52 episodes, the shortest run of all of these other Nicktoons that we just talked about, but easily one of the biggest impacts on animation as a whole. The Ren and Stimpy Show came about and just completely took children's entertainment and turned it on its head. The Ren and Stimpy Show became a college attraction for people to come together and get watch parties to watch the Ren and Stimpy Show. It became an event. Now, around this was also a lot of controversy stemming from the creator. And I'm not talking about any of the recent controversies with that guy. I'm talking about the controversies at the time of not being able to deliver episodes on time and just overall being an absolute nuisance to anyone he pretty much worked with. The Ren and Stimpy Show was actually the first show that was brought away from one animation studio and then brought in-house to what was then called Games Animation, which would later then be retitled to the Nickelodeon Animation Studio. The first show under that belt is the Ren and Stimpy Show, which they had to take over from its just absolute monster of a creator. I think that's the most statement I've ever made on the guy, and that's honestly the most I will ever want to talk about him. Other than the fact that Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon is proof positive that some people work better under restraints than the alluring idea of just taking the leash off and letting somebody go on their own and seeing what they can really do. No, I think Ren and Stimpy works better under restraints. It's the fact that it's a children's show that can get away with a lot of adult humor is what makes it alluring. Making it an adult show where it doesn't have to get away with that humor makes it boring and you're just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Not really a fan of that. But as far as this original run of Ren and Stimpy, I am a bit of a fan of it. I love Ren and Stimpy, and when it's late at night or early in the morning, I'm talking like 3 a.m. time, the real weird hours of the night, Ren and Stimpy is among the top cartoons you can put on during that time. When you're a little overtired, things are a little goofy, a little silly. Yeah, it's Ren and Stimpy time. But out of those first 3 Nicktoons, if you have any memories, any loves, any specific episodes, characters that you want to talk about, I just want to talk with you guys in the comments below. So let me know what you think. If you have any episodes you want to shout out, or any ones that you think were absolute rubbish, let's talk about them. 20 years ago, on August 15th, 1992, we had the first episode of Roundhouse, created by Buddy Sheffield and Rita Sheffield Hester. The show ran for 4 seasons of 52 episodes. Roundhouse originally debuted a part of the Snick lineup in 1992 and continued its run until 1996 when its final episode aired on Christmas Eve. This was a variety comedy show of sorts where things were constantly changing. You didn't really have time to get adjusted to what was happening. I'm not talking about all that levels of comedy variety where there's a set involved and characters and costume. A lot of the characters on this show, the kids, did a lot of improv right on the spot moments right in front of a live audience, and things were constantly changing from bit to bit, and you really never knew what you were going to get. There were some reoccurring characters and segments, although I don't think they were as reoccurring as something like All That. But there was a lot of music and dance sequences that were involved with Roundhouse as well. I would certainly say it is worth checking out, at least if you've never seen it before. Check out Roundhouse on YouTube. I wouldn't say it's worth watching in its entirety, but I would say that with even a lot of variety shows like All That. For as much as I love All That, there's just so much that I would say I would rather like pick and piece together some of the best bits of All That than to just say watching it in its entirety. So same thing with Roundhouse. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't already. 19 years ago, on August 9th, 2003, we had the As Told by Ginger TV movie Far From Home, or also known as Fountleys on Ice. This was a 3-part episode in which Ginger went off to an art school due to the scam of Miranda and Mipsy, two characters who sent her away because she was taking the attention of their rich friend Courtney, who absolutely adores Ginger, her life, her lifestyle, and just really wants to befriend her. And I honestly don't remember this one as much as the previous As Told by Ginger movie, which, I went back and watched because I remember having fond memories of that TV movie, but I didn't have specifics. So I wanted to go back and see if I could reclaim some of those specifics, and I think I did. Whereas this one, I just don't have the time to go back and watch thus far. But I remember I've seen the episode. I remember the art school setting being involved. I remember the B plot about Carl, the love triangle between Carl, Hoodsey, and Noelle. I remember that specifically. But I was actually appalled to look at the third season here of As Told by Ginger just completely thrown to the wayside. I know some of these shows have had some rough second seasons where you just get pushed over to Nicktoons Network. Well, As Told by Ginger had a third season that wasn't not just pushed to Nicktoons Network, but only 2 episodes of its third season aired on Nicktoons Network, with 5 or 6 remaining completely unaired, just at all. They aired one in 2004, brand new episode in November 24th, 2004 in Nicktoons. 2 years later, on November 14th, 2006, aired another new episode, which was the next one in line. People literally had to wait 2 years for that episode to air, and then nothing else. And then if you happen to have watched The Wedding Frame from the Wedding Frame DVD, the series finale, that apparently was the only way to get that. Pretty crazy. How do you have 2 channels, you have Nickelodeon and you have Nicktoons Network, you don't have 6 spots available to air this content? I don't get it. I really don't. I'm not the one in charge here. 19 years ago as well, we also had the finale of Scaredy Camp on August 16th, 2003, created by Liz Becker. The show was a reality show that gave kids the opportunity to go basically on a haunted scavenger hunt, a story-based haunted scavenger hunt through the aforementioned Scaredy Camp. The show ran for 2 seasons of 10 episodes. 18 years ago, on August 8th, 2004, we had the final episode of The Brothers Garcia. Created by Jeff Valdez, Mike and Gibby Salvelos, the show ran for 4 seasons of 52 episodes, including a TV movie. And just for you Brothers Garcia fans, just so you're aware, on HBO Max, a reboot was ordered for The Brothers Garcia that was called The Garcias, and it premiered this year on April 14th, 2022. But with everything currently going on at HBO Max, I highly doubt we'll be seeing more of the Garcias anytime soon. I am, by the way, completely baffled with what's going on over there. I don't know about you. Maybe in the bigger picture, Discovery is a bigger commodity than I feel like, but it just feels like Discovery is purposely doing this. It's just throwing itself around at bigger commodities like WB and even HBO on its own. I feel like is a bigger piece of entertainment than Discovery. Not to disparage anything that Discovery has had. I love Mythbusters, everything with the Crocodile Hunter and any of the shows he's had on some of their other networks like Animal Planet. But yeah, I don't know. Just seems weird with what's going on and that they're just terrorizing HBO Max and all the WB projects. And it just seems really weird, really, really sad. But yeah, if you have HBO Max currently and you haven't seen it on there, you have a sequel to The Brothers Garcia available to you right now. Also, 18 years ago, on August 10th, 2004, we had the premiere of Blues Room. Created by Tracy Page Johnson and Angela Santomero, the show ran for 2 seasons of 17 episodes. The live-action sequel to Blue's Clues, and I mean live-action in the way that not just the main character is a live-action character. All of the characters here are live-action. They're puppets. And for those that really don't know, wait a minute, there was a spin-off to Blue's Clues? What's going on? In the later seasons of Blue's Clues, when Joe was involved, Steve was gone, they found a new segment that I think they saw Sesame Street taking advantage of, where the last part of every Sesame Street episode, and I know this because my brother was born in 2004, so I was watching a lot of Sesame Street in those first 2 years, but the end of every episode of Sesame Street had like 10 or 15 minutes devoted to Elmo in Elmo's world. That's where like Mr. Noodle came in and the fish, the goldfish. So I think Blue's Clues was taking this similar idea where they would devote the end part of every episode to Blue's Room. They made an entire special where Blue would discover this magic, like, toy box, this wind-up box, that when Blue would open it, she would get transported into this world where she would be a puppet, and not only be a puppet, but was given the ability to then talk to the viewer. So for the first time ever, Blue can talk. That's pretty much what the special for Blue's Room was listed as. It was just advertised as like, this is the special that Blue can finally talk to you. And after that special, Blue's Room just became a bit of a end segment for Blue's Clues until they just said, well, why don't we just make this its own show and see how this runs? It ran for 2 seasons of 17 episodes. Other than that, I really don't have much to say. I watched Blue's Room with my brother, but I even at like 14, 15 at that time, I felt like an old man of like, this isn't my Blue's Clues. I'm not watching this. And I wasn't that much of a fan. Although I'm completely out of the demographic of it, even at this point in my life. So who cares what I think about Blue's Room? If you were a fan of Blue's Room, I hope you enjoyed it as a kid. I hope it, gave you at least a half hour of a distraction for whatever was going on in your life. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. 16 years ago, on August 13th, 2006, we had the final episode of Just for Kicks. Created by Alana Sanko and developed by Whoopi Goldberg, the show ran for 1 season of 13 episodes. This show aired once and went on to become one of the biggest pieces of Nickelodeon's lost media until in 2016, 10 years after the original premiere. The entirety of the show was uploaded to YouTube by someone, I'm guessing completely random, who just might have had screen caps, or someone in the production who just might have had the show. I think that's really interesting when things just pop up out of nowhere on YouTube without notice. When things like this happen, something's just lost and then somebody just uploads it. And I love whether or not it's even the intention of the person uploading, if they know it's lost, or they're just like, oh, I had this sitting on a tape and I just decided to upload it to YouTube. The people just completely clueless to the ongoing searches for some of these media that are happening and like Reddit posts and whatnot, but absolutely crazy. I don't know if there's any fans of Just for Kicks out there, but if you are, let yourself be known. 9 years ago, on August 12th, 2013, we had the premiere of Paw Patrol on Nickelodeon. Created by Keith Chapman, the show is still ongoing, currently in 9 seasons, 400 episodes, a successful theatrical movie, and a sequel on the way. Paw Patrol shows no signs of slowing down. And let me tell you, from someone who has seen the Paw Patrol movie due to its inclusion on Paramount Plus and just finding myself on a morning with nothing to watch way too early before work, I decided to throw it on, and it really wasn't that bad. It didn't hurt my brain to watch something that was based on a preschool show. The movie was quite enjoyable, so I can't imagine the half-hour series being that enjoyable as a feature film, but it has its fans out there. 400 episodes, that is a lot of Paw Patrol. There's a lot of eyes watching it, so I got to imagine there's some fans out there. If you're listening to this, make yourself be known. Do you have a favorite pup? Are you excited for the new movie coming out? Let me know what you think in the comments below. 6 years ago, on August 13th, 2016, we had the final episode of Legendary Dudas. Created by Kevin Jakubowski, the show ran for 1 season of 6 episodes. 4 years ago, on August 11th, 2018, we had the final episode of Pig Goat Banana Cricket. Created by Dave Cooper and Johnny Ryan, the show ran for 2 seasons of 40 episodes. And 2 years ago, on August 7th, 2020, we had the final episode of Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And strangely enough, I'm recording this episode a day before the release of their feature film on Netflix. On August 5th, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, which, by the way, I may have not watched much of the show, but the movie trailer made this almost a must-see. I'm definitely checking the movie out. This is the second series under Nickelodeon's ownership of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first being that absolutely incredible 2012 series, but From all accounts, this series has stood on its own 2 feet and has made a statement for the Ninja Turtles brand. I hear a lot of positive things that have come out of the show. I do like the designs a ton. I am someone who has completely, at a young age, got okay with the fact that the Ninja Turtles were going to look different in almost every incarnation, and in that regard, they were going to be tweaked in different ways. So, in seeing the designs of these turtles, I don't freak out like some others, but I've heard so many good things about the show, and like I said, I'm excited to watch the movie, so if you're a fan, definitely get ready for that. But that's going to be this week for This Week in Nickelodeon History. Before we leave, though, got to give you my top 5 of the week, and since we were talking about it, it made sense to give you my top 5 Ren and Stimpy episodes. Top 5 Ren and Stimpy Show episodes. Unfortunately, some of these are going to be a little bit harder to find than others. Ren and Stimpy, unfortunately, is not in its entirety on Paramount Plus, and it really should be. Hopefully, they fix that with the upcoming reboot, and they push Ren and Stimpy proper on the service, as they did with Beavis and Butthead and the classic episodes of that. But these are my top 5 episodes. If you are going to watch 5 Ren and Stimpy episodes, these are the ones that Captain Eric is going to tell you to watch. Number 5, a classic in its own right due to the iconic song that goes on. Number 5 is Stimpy's Invention. Happy, happy, joy, joy is all I got to say about that episode. Number 4 is the classic Space Madness, which, even if you haven't watched Ren and Stimpy, if you have played the Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl game, the stage that Ren and Stimpy bring to the table is based off of Space Madness. So just to show you, that's a legendary episode of Ren and Stimpy. And I don't love it just because it's legendary, but it has moments in there that have made me laugh for the last 3 decades and will continue to do so for the next 3. Number 3, Dog Show, with one of my favorite Ren and Stimpy side characters, George Liquor. American! George Liquor, of course, not really the fondest character from the Nickelodeon executives, but one of my favorites. If you have never seen Dog Show, or you've never even looked at George Liquor, don't look up anything else with that guy. Just watch Dog Show, Man's Best Friend. Those would be some good episodes with George Liquor to watch. Number 2 is a very special episode for me, Big Baby Scam, because when I met Bob Camp, who was a writer, director, producer for the Ren and Stimpy Show, one of the minds behind it over at Spumco. And just for a little bit of history here, when production of Ren and Stimpy was moved from Spumco over to Games, Bob Camp is the one who left Spumco to go become the new director for the Ren and Stimpy Show. But even with those later episodes under his belt, Bob was still a major part of those early episodes of the Ren and Stimpy Show. And when I met Bob Camp a few years back and paid for him to draw me Ren and Stimpy, I had just asked him, I said, hey, can you draw one thing in particular? There's this scene from Big Baby Scam that always makes me laugh, in which Uncle Hunger holds Ren and Stimpy. He's the grandpa in the family tub, and he whistles at him. I didn't even get that much of the explanation out. I said, hey, there's this one scene I love in Big Baby Scam. And he looked at me and goes, Uncle Hunger? And his eyes widened. And I went, yeah, in the bathtub? And he was like, yeah, no problem. An hour later, I got a text message that my drawing was done. And I went over to find just one of my favorite things that I own, a drawing from Bob Camp of Ren and Stimpy in the hands of Uncle Hunger. And it hangs proudly behind me on my office wall. Make sure to take a picture of that after this episode is up, so you'll find that on social media. Funny side story about that, before we go on to number 1. I was so proud of that text message from Bob, because they sent a text message that said, happy, happy, joy, joy, your drawing is done. And I don't know, for some reason, I saved that text message conversation. I didn't save the number in my phone as Bob Camp. I just had the convo there, and I accidentally texted it 2 years later, thinking it was my ex, but at the time it wasn't. It was Bob Camp, and I still have this text message conversation to this day, in which I messaged on Tuesday, May 17th, 2016, "Hi, Boo," and the response was a confused hi with a thinking emoji. And when I received that, I had, when you get a text on your like top notification bar, it might not tell you the number. It'll just give you the text. I could reply to that on my phone at the time, and I just replied to it. I just wanted to say I love you. The response to that, though, even not seeing the name, I knew I had messed up and texted somebody else, because the response to that was, love is all there is, with heart eyes emoji. When I opened up the phone proper, I realized that I had accidentally texted the phone number that was associated with either Bob Camp or his wife, who was, with him at the time, helping him with drawings and dealing with people and money and whatnot. So I responded with a heartfelt apology. Oh boy, Mr. or Mrs. Camp, I do apologize. This is embarrassing, with a crying emoji. And what I received back warmed my heart, and to this day brings a smile to my face. The response was, right on, giggle, giggle, we love you too, and sent back a picture of Ren and Stimpy maniacally laughing. I can't thank them enough for their love during that time. A wrong text message. They probably just got some rogue number. They didn't save Captain Eric's number in their phone. I'll tell you that. What? But yeah, number one here for my top 5 episodes of Ren and Stimpy for you to watch if you've never watched. Number 1 is Sven Hoek. I absolutely love this episode. I could talk about that episode in its entirety for its own podcast. That's how much I love this episode. But to give you the basic TLDR, Ren's cousin Sven is coming over to visit, and while Ren expects somebody more like him, he in fact finds just pretty much Stimpy 2.0, but Stimpy like a dog. It is absolutely hilarious and is just by far my favorite Ren and Stimpy episode. And that is going to be it for this week in Nickelodeon history. Thank you for coming aboard. Thank you for coming along and joining me. I really appreciate each and every one of you for your time. If you want to reach out to Captain Eric for anything about the show, if you have questions for the snail mail bag, any suggestions, you can reach me at nickelodeonhistory@gmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at I'm Ready Podcast and on Instagram at SpongeBob Podcast. You can also subscribe to the Captain Eric YouTube channel by clicking on the link in the podcast description, where you can also hit that bell so you can be notified anytime the Captain puts something out. Please check out my other podcast, I'm Ready, a SpongePod Squarecast, dropping every Thursday on most conceivable podcasting platforms. You can also purchase new and updated Captain Eric merch in the Redbubble link, either in the podcast description or from any of the links from any of my socials. Anything that comes in from my projects go directly back into my projects, and it is always appreciated. Guys, thank you for joining me on This Week in Nickelodeon History. Please come aboard again next week for another exciting episode.
On the Lord Hut, here we hut, Nick. On the Lord Hut, here we hut, Nick, Nick. On the Ricky Ticky Low, while living #1 Nickelodeon.